Louisiana, September 1944. The train carrying German prisoners slowed at Camp Ruston, and 19 women pressed their faces against barred windows, straining to see what awaited them. They had been told stories, propaganda lessons about American degeneracy, about a soft and weakened people corrupted by luxury. Then the guards appeared on the platform, 6 feet tall, broader than any man they'd seen in years of wartime rationing. Moving with casual confidence that felt almost alien, Erika Schneider, 24, radio operator from Munich, whispered to the woman beside her, "They're bigger than we expected." That simple observation would crack open everything they thought they knew. The Atlantic crossing had taken 3 weeks, from Casablanca to Norfolk, Virginia, aboard a converted troop transport that rolled and pitched through autumn storms. The 19 women, all Luftwaffe auxiliaries captured when Allied forces overran communication stations across North Africa, spent most of the voyage in a converted storage hold below deck, sick and frightened, and certain they were sailing toward punishment. They had been fed propaganda for years. Images of Americans as racially inferior, physically weak, morally corrupt. Cartoons showing small, cowardly soldiers dependent on technology because they lacked German strength and discipline. Stories of American brutality toward prisoners, beatings, starvation, humiliation designed to break the spirit. Erika Schneider believed most of it. She had no reason not to. She was 24, educated in a system that had controlled information since she was 12. Her father had been a schoolteacher before the war, loyal to the regime, teaching his daughter that Germany represented civilization's peak and that enemies were inferior by definition. When the ship docked at Norfolk, the women were transferred to a processing facility. Concrete buildings, chain-link fences, guards with rifles who spoke no German. They were photographed, fingerprinted, examined by military physicians who were professional but distant. The process took 2 days. Then they were loaded onto a train heading west. The journey across America stunned them into silence. They had expected ruins. Surely a nation at war would show signs of sacrifice, of struggle. Instead, they saw cities with lights blazing at night, farms with full barns and fat cattle, towns where children played in streets without fear of air raids. The abundance felt obscene, impossible, like a staged performance designed to deceive them. "It can't be real," whispered Greta Hoffman, 31, a communications officer who had worked in Tripoli. "They must be showing us only the good parts." But the train rolled for days, and the good parts never ended. Through Virginia and Tennessee and Arkansas, past fields heavy with crops, past towns that showed no bomb damage, past people who looked well-fed and unafraid. Erika pressed her forehead against the window, trying to reconcile what she saw with what she'd been taught. If Americans were soft and weak, how had they built this? If they were starving and desperate, where was the evidence? The questions unsettled her more than any answer could have. Camp Ruston, Louisiana, September 15, 1944. The train slowed as it approached the installation. Through windows clouded with dust and condensation, the women glimpsed guard towers, barbed wire fences, rows of wooden barracks stretching toward pine forests. It looked like every prisoner of war camp they'd imagined. Austere, functional, designed for containment. But when the train stopped and the doors opened, what they saw defied expectation. The guards stood on the platform in neat formation. There were 6 of them, all male, all wearing American Army uniforms with pressed creases and polished boots. But it was their physical presence that struck first and hardest. They were enormous. Not just tall, though they were that, most over 6 feet, but broad-shouldered, thick-armed, carrying weight that looked like strength rather than fat. Their faces were tanned and healthy. Their movements were confident, relaxed, showing none of the tension or hunger that marked every German soldier the women had seen in the final months before capture. "Jesus Christ," Greta whispered in German. "Look at them." Erika couldn't look away. The guard nearest the train, a sergeant with red hair and a square jaw, had to weigh 90 kilograms at least. His forearms were thick as fence posts. His hands looked capable of crushing stone. Beside her, Anna Koch started crying quietly. "They're going to hurt us," she whispered. "Look how big they are. They're going to—" "Quiet," Erica hissed, though her own heart hammered against her ribs. The sergeant stepped forward, spoke in accented but comprehensible German. "Exit the train in single file. Bring your belongings. No running. No talking. Follow instructions." His voice was deep but not unkind. He didn't shout, didn't threaten, simply gave orders and waited. The women filed out slowly, clutching small bags that held everything they owned. Erica descended the steps carefully, legs shaky from days of travel. When she reached the platform, she found herself standing 5 feet from the red-haired sergeant. He looked down at her. She was 165 centimeters tall, average for a German woman, and the difference in their heights made her feel like a child. "Name?" he asked in German. "Schneider, Erica Schneider." He marked something on a clipboard. "Barracks assignment 4. Follow Corporal Henderson." Another guard, this one, dark-haired, just as large, gestured for a group of 5 women to follow him. Erica was among them. They walked across the compound in silence, surrounded by Americans who moved with an ease that felt almost careless. No tension, no fear. Just men doing jobs, confident in their strength and their authority. The contrast was staggering. Every German soldier Erica had seen in the past year had looked thin, exhausted, running on adrenaline and ideology. These Americans looked like they'd just eaten full meals and slept 8 hours and could fight a war without breaking stride. "How?" Greta whispered behind her. "How are they so—" She didn't finish, but Erica understood the question. How could a supposedly inferior people look so strong? How could a nation at war for 3 years show no signs of strain? The propaganda had been wrong. Catastrophically, fundamentally wrong. And if it was wrong about this, what else was wrong? Barracks 4 was a wooden structure with screens on the windows and a pot-bellied stove in the center. 20 bunks lined the walls, 10 per side, with thin mattresses and wool blankets. A single light bulb hung from the ceiling. At the far end was a small bathroom with 3 sinks, 2 toilets, and a shower. Corporal Henderson, the dark-haired guard, showed them around with efficient gestures. Beds are first come, first served. Bathroom is shared. Lights out at 2200. Wake up at 0600. Mess hall opens at 0630. His German was worse than the sergeant's, but he supplemented with hand gestures and pointing. When he finished, he positioned himself near the door and simply waited while the women claimed bunks and unpacked their meager belongings. Erica chose a bunk near the window. She sat on the edge, testing the mattress, thin but clean, and watched Henderson through lowered lashes. He was young, maybe 25, with broad shoulders and hands that dwarfed the clipboard he held. But what struck her most was his posture. He stood relaxed, weight on one leg, expression neutral. Not menacing, not even particularly interested, just present, doing a job. She had expected cruelty, leering looks, comments, threats. But Henderson simply stood there, occasionally making notes, waiting for the women to settle. "Why aren't they hurting us?" Anna whispered from the next bunk. Erica had no answer. After 30 minutes, Henderson spoke again. "Dinner in 1 hour. Formation outside the barracks. Someone will escort you." Then he left. Just walked out, closing the door behind him. No lock turned, no bar dropped into place. They weren't locked in. The women sat in stunned silence for several moments. Finally, Greta stood and walked to the door, opened it slowly, looked outside. "There's a guard," she reported, "about 10 meters away, but he's just standing there, not even looking at us." "Test it," said Liesel Braun, 28, a cipher specialist who had maintained the hardest edge of any of them. "Walk out, see what happens." Greta hesitated, then stepped onto the small porch that fronted the barracks. The guard, yet another large American, glanced at her but didn't move, didn't speak, just watched. Greta stood there for a moment, then came back inside. "Nothing," she said. "He just looked at me. Didn't say anything, didn't do anything." "They're waiting," Liesel said, darkly. "Building false security, then they'll strike." But Erica wasn't sure. She thought about Henderson's bored expression, the sergeant's professional efficiency, the casual confidence all the guards displayed. These weren't men preparing to abuse prisoners. These were men who had already won and knew it. Dinner formation happened at 1800 hours. A different guard, older, gray-haired, just as physically imposing, lined them up outside the barracks and marched them to the mess hall with no words and no drama. The mess hall was a large wooden building with long tables and benches. American soldiers ate at half the tables. German prisoners, all male, maybe 200 of them, occupied the other half. The women were directed to a separate section near the kitchen. Erica joined the serving line, took a metal tray, moved past steam tables where cooks, American cooks, not prisoners, loaded her plate with food: mashed potatoes, gravy, roast beef, green beans, bread with butter, coffee, an apple. She stared at the tray, unable to process what she was seeing. This was more food than she'd seen in a single meal in years. In Germany, they'd been on strict rationing since 1939. Toward the end, before capture, she'd been eating watery soup and black bread, lucky to get meat once a week. This was abundance on a scale that seemed criminal. She sat at a table with Greta and Anna and 4 other women. They all stared at their trays, silent, overwhelmed. Finally, Greta picked up her fork and took a bite of potato. Her eyes closed. Tears started falling. "It's real," she whispered. "God help us. It's real." Erica ate slowly, methodically, trying not to cry. The beef was tender, seasoned with salt and pepper and something else she couldn't identify. The potatoes were creamy, the butter fresh, the apple crisp and sweet. Each bite confirmed what her eyes had been telling her since Norfolk. America wasn't suffering. America wasn't starving. America had been feeding its citizens and its soldiers and now even its enemies with food that surpassed anything Germany had managed, even in peacetime. At the next table, a group of male German prisoners ate in similar stunned silence. One of them, a thin man with hollow cheeks, held his piece of bread like it was holy, turning it over and over, unable to believe it was his. Across the mess hall, American soldiers ate the same food, talking and laughing, paying no attention to the prisoners. To them, this meal was normal, unremarkable. Just dinner. "How did we lose to these people?" Anna asked quietly. It was the question everyone was thinking, but no one wanted to speak aloud. Because the answer was becoming horrifyingly clear. They'd lost because they'd been fighting an enemy with unlimited resources, vast industrial capacity, and enough food to feed armies and prisoners alike without strain. Germany had been starving since 1943. America was serving roast beef to enemy captives. The disparity was enormous, it redefined everything. 3 days passed. The routine established itself. Wake at 6, breakfast at 6:30, work assignments after morning roll call. The women were split into groups for different tasks: kitchen duty, laundry service, groundskeeping, administrative filing. Erica was assigned to the camp administration building, filing documents and organizing records under the supervision of Sergeant Marcus Riley, the red-haired giant from the train platform. Riley was 32, from Nebraska, with a face that looked carved from granite and a voice that carried authority without needing volume. He stood over 6 feet 3 inches tall and weighed at least 95 kilograms of what appeared to be pure muscle. But what unnerved Erica most wasn't his size. It was his competence. He spoke 3 languages fluently: English, German, and French. He knew the Geneva Convention by heart and enforced its provisions meticulously. He managed paperwork with the efficiency of a born bureaucrat. He was patient when explaining tasks, strict when enforcing rules, and utterly immune to any attempt at manipulation. "You'll be organizing personnel files," he told Erica on her first day, gesturing to a wall of filing cabinets. "Alphabetically, by last name. Each file needs to be checked for completeness. Identification, capture report, medical examination, work assignment. If anything is missing, flag it with this form. He demonstrated once, efficiently, then left her to work. Erica spent the morning surrounded by files of German prisoners, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all captured across North Africa and Italy, all now held in camps scattered across America. Reading through them was like witnessing the collapse of everything she'd believed. These weren't soldiers defeated by superior tactics. These were men who had been overwhelmed by sheer material abundance. One file noted, prisoner reported extreme surprise at food quality and quantity, stated that American rations exceeded anything available to German forces even in peacetime. Another, subject expressed disbelief at seeing fresh fruit in mess hall, asked if it was a special occasion, informed it was standard daily provision. Over and over, the same theme, German prisoners confronting the reality that everything they'd been told about American weakness was propaganda, and America was strong in ways they couldn't have imagined. At lunch, Riley ate at his desk while Erica filed documents. She watched him covertly. The easy way he moved despite his size, the unconscious confidence in every gesture. He ate a sandwich that looked small in his enormous hands, drank coffee from a mug that could have held half a liter. "You have questions," he said, without looking up. Erica froze. "Sir? I've been doing this for 2 years. I know when prisoners have questions. Ask them." She hesitated, then, "How are you so—" She struggled for the right word. "So healthy. You're at war. Your country should be rationing, should be thin, but all of you are big," Riley finished. He looked at her directly. "Because America produces more food than we can eat. Because our farms cover areas larger than most European countries. Because even at war, we have surplus." But the propaganda said, "Propaganda is lies designed to make you feel superior," Riley interrupted. "Your government told you Americans were weak because they needed you to believe it. If you'd known the truth, that America can field millions of well-fed, well-equipped soldiers while still feeding prisoners roast beef, you might have questioned whether winning was possible." Erica felt something crack inside her. "We never had a chance, did we?" Riley was silent for a moment. "No, you didn't. Not against this." He gestured vaguely toward the window, toward America beyond. "But that doesn't make you less human, doesn't mean you don't deserve decent treatment. You're just people who got caught up in something bigger than yourselves." It was the kindest thing anyone had said to her in months, and it came from a man who had every reason to hate her. Weeks turned into months. October gave way to November. The women adapted to camp routine with the resigned efficiency of people who had no other choice. Work, meals, sleep, occasional letters from home. Heavily censored, months delayed, often bearing terrible news. Erica received a letter from her mother in early December. The envelope had been opened and resealed multiple times, covered in stamps from various military postal services. The letter inside was 4 months old, written in August. "Dearest Erica, I pray this reaches you. Hamburg was bombed again in July. We lost the house. Your father and I are living with Aunt Gerda outside the city. Food is scarce. We eat potatoes and cabbage, sometimes bread if we're lucky. I've lost 15 kilos. Your father looks like a skeleton. But we are alive and we thank God for that. I hope you are being treated well. I hope you are safe. I hope you come home to us when this nightmare ends. Your loving Muti." Erica read the letter 3 times, then folded it carefully and put it in the wooden box under her bunk where she kept her few possessions. Her mother was starving. Her father was starving. Her city was ruins. And she was eating 3 full meals a day, working in a heated office, sleeping in a clean barracks. The guilt was crushing. That evening, she stood outside the barracks in cold air that felt sharp against her face. The compound was quiet. Guard towers rose against a sky full of stars. Somewhere in the distance, a radio played music. American jazz, smooth and complex and utterly foreign. Sergeant Riley walked past on his rounds, saw her standing there, paused. You all right, Schneider? I received a letter from home. Riley waited. My parents are starving. My city is ruins. And I'm here, eating roast beef, warm and safe. She looked at him. How is that fair? Riley considered the question seriously. It's not. War isn't fair. You're experiencing the consequences of decisions your government made years before you were old enough to question them. Your parents are experiencing the same consequences. It's all profoundly unfair. But you're treating us well, Erica said. Better than we treated your prisoners, probably. Why? Because your government was wrong doesn't mean we have to be, Riley replied simply. Because we're trying to build a world where wars end and people go home and life rebuilds. Can't do that if we dehumanize everyone we fight. Can't build peace by creating more hatred. He paused, seemed to debate something, then continued. My brother was at Normandy. He's dead. Your military did that, but you personally didn't do it. You filed paperwork and encoded weather reports. Should I hate you for that? Should I starve you? What would that accomplish except making me as bad as the people we're fighting against? Erica had no answer. She stood in the cold, feeling small and confused and profoundly displaced from everything she'd once believed. Go inside, Riley said gently. It's cold, get some sleep. She obeyed, but sleep was slow in coming. December brought unexpected developments. The camp chaplain, a Lutheran pastor from Wisconsin who spoke fluent German, organized Christmas services for the prisoners. He also arranged for the Red Cross to deliver packages, books, playing cards, writing materials, small luxury items like chocolate and soap. The packages arrived on December 20th, distributed during evening formation. Each prisoner received the same contents: a bar of chocolate, a tablet of good soap, a pack of playing cards, 3 sheets of writing paper with envelopes, and a small book in German. For the women, the books were poetry collections: Goethe, Rilke, Heine. Erica held her Rilke volume carefully, running fingers over the cover. She hadn't held a book in nearly a year. The simple act of ownership, of being given something beyond bare necessities, felt disorienting. Why? Greta asked aloud, speaking the question they all felt. Why give us these things? No one had an answer. Christmas Eve brought another surprise. The mess hall was decorated with paper chains and a small pine tree someone had cut from the forest. Dinner was special. Turkey, mashed potatoes, gravy, green beans, cranberry sauce, pie. After the meal, the chaplain led a service. Hymns sung in German, prayers offered in multiple languages, a sermon about hope and redemption and the possibility of peace. American soldiers attended alongside German prisoners. The guards stood at attention, rifles at rest, faces neutral. When the chaplain asked them to sing Silent Night in German, 300 voices rose in uncertain harmony. Stille Nacht. Heilige Nacht. Erica sang with tears streaming down her face. Across the room, Sergeant Riley stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his expression unreadable. After the service, Riley approached her as the prisoners filed out of the mess hall. My mother loves that hymn, he said quietly. She always cries when she sings it. Says it reminds her that even in darkness there's light. Does she know you're here? Erica asked. Taking care of enemy prisoners? She knows I'm doing my duty. That's enough for her. And what is your duty, Sergeant? Just following orders? Riley looked at her steadily. My duty is to remember that you're human beings, that you have mothers who love you and homes you want to return to, that treating you decently isn't weakness, it's strength. It's choosing to be better than the worst things we've seen. He walked away before she could respond, leaving her standing in the cold with the echo of hymns in her ears and the weight of his words pressing on her chest. January 1945 brought news of German collapse, the failed Ardennes offensive, the Soviet advance across Poland, cities falling one after another. In the camp, prisoners listened to radio broadcasts with growing despair, understanding that defeat was no longer a possibility but an inevitability. Erica worked through it all, filing documents, organizing records, trying not to think too hard about what each file represented. Another German soldier captured, another life disrupted, another family waiting for word that might never come. One afternoon in late January, Riley called her into his office. He sat behind a desk covered in paperwork, looking tired. "Sit down, Schneider." She sat, nervous. Had she done something wrong? "I've been reviewing your file," Riley said. "You were a radio operator, meteorological communications, low-level classification, no evidence of direct participation in combat operations or—" He hesitated. Other activities. Other activities. She knew what he meant. The camps, the atrocities, the things they were all learning about now, as American newspapers circulated through the compound, carrying photographs and reports that made her want to vomit. "I didn't know," she said desperately. "I swear I didn't know." "I believe you," Riley interrupted. "Most people didn't know, or didn't want to know. There's a difference, but it's smaller than you think." He paused. "The point is, when repatriation begins, and it will, probably this year, you'll likely be cleared quickly. Low threat, no evidence of crimes. You'll go home." Home. The word felt hollow. "And do what?" Erica asked. "Go back to rubble, find my starving parents? Live in occupied Germany under foreign control?" "Yes," Riley said simply. "That's exactly what you'll do. Because that's what rebuilding looks like. It's not glorious. It's just work." "But I don't want to leave," Erica said, and realized as she said it that it was true. "Here, I'm safe. I have food. I have work. I don't have to see what Germany has become. I don't have to face what we did." Riley's expression hardened. "You don't get to hide here, Schneider. You don't get to stay comfortable in an American prison camp while your country rebuilds. You were part of what Germany was. Now you need to be part of what it becomes." "But I'm just one person," Erica protested. "What difference can I make?" "Same difference anyone makes," Riley replied. "You can choose to be decent, to treat people well, to reject the ideology that led to this mess. One person at a time, that's how countries change." He stood, signaling the conversation was over. "Get back to work and start preparing yourself. You won't be here forever." April brought warmer weather and news of Germany's final collapse. Berlin surrounded. Leaders meeting tragic fates in bunkers. Surrender imminent. In Camp Rustin, prisoners waited with mixed dread and relief, knowing the end was near, but uncertain what ending would mean. Erica had grown accustomed to camp life in ways that frightened her. She knew every guard's name. She understood the routines perfectly. She could navigate the bureaucracy like a native. She spoke English fluently now, with hardly any accent. America felt more familiar than Germany, and that realization was profoundly disturbing. One evening in late April, she sat under a live oak tree near the women's barracks, watching the sunset through pine branches. Sergeant Riley approached, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. He handed one to her and sat on a nearby bench. "War's almost over," he said. "Yes. You'll go home soon." "Yes." They sat in silence, drinking coffee as light faded, and evening shadows stretched long across the compound. "Can I ask you something?" Erica said finally. "Sure." "Did you hate us when we first arrived? Did you look at us and think, these are the enemy? These are the people whose government hurt my country, took my brother?" Riley thought about it. "No. I looked at you and thought, these are scared women a long way from home who probably didn't want this war any more than I did. That's what I saw. That's what I still see." "But we were part of it," Erica insisted. "We served the regime. We enabled everything." "So did every German who paid taxes, or obeyed orders, or just kept their head down and hoped to survive," Riley interrupted. "You're not special in your guilt, Schneider. You're ordinary. That's almost worse, isn't it? Knowing that millions of ordinary people just like you made it all possible?" Erica felt tears burning. "How do I live with that?" "Same way everyone lives with their mistakes," Riley said quietly. "You acknowledge what you did. You commit to doing better. You work to build something that prevents it from happening again. That's all any of us can do. He stood, finished his coffee, looked down at her. When you go home, and you will go home, remember this place. Remember that your enemies fed you and treated you decently and sent you back to rebuild. Remember that strength isn't about cruelty. That winning doesn't require dehumanizing the defeated. That's the lesson you carry forward. He walked away, leaving her alone with the sunset and the weight of everything he'd said. May 8th, 1945. Germany surrendered. The news reached Camp Rustin in the morning, transmitted through radio broadcasts that crackled with excitement and relief. American soldiers celebrated, not viciously, but with obvious joy. The war in Europe was over. Men would go home soon. In the women's barracks, the mood was funereal. They gathered in small groups, speaking in low voices, trying to process what defeat meant. Some cried. Others sat in stunned silence. A few, like Liesel, retreated into anger, blaming everyone but themselves. Erica sat on her bunk and thought about Sergeant Riley's size, about the abundance of American meals, about the casual confidence of guards who never needed to prove their strength because it was self-evident. She thought about propaganda that had told her Americans were weak, and about the crushing reality that had demolished that lie brick by brick. They had lost to these people not because Germans were inferior, though that was what they'd be told now, she imagined, but because Germany had built a system based on conquest and hatred and unsustainable ideology, while America had built a system based on production and pragmatism and vast resources. The difference wasn't racial or moral, it was material, and material differences in war were everything. That evening, there was no celebration in the camp, just quiet routine, dinner, roll call, lights out. The American guards seemed subdued, as if understanding that their joy was the prisoners' grief and choosing to moderate their responses accordingly. Riley stopped by the administration building where Erica was working late, filing end-of-day reports. "You doing okay?" he asked. "I don't know," she admitted. "How should I feel? My country just lost everything, but I'm relieved it's over. Does that make me a traitor?" "Makes you human," Riley replied. "Tired of war, tired of death, wanting to rebuild. That's not betrayal, that's survival instinct. When will we go home? Couple months, probably. They need to arrange transportation, coordinate with occupation forces, process thousands of prisoners, but soon you'll go home soon." Erica nodded, feeling numb. "One more thing," Riley said. "When you get home, when you see how bad it is, when you face how hard rebuilding will be, remember that it's possible. Remember that we rebuilt after our Civil War. Remember that destruction isn't permanent. Hate isn't permanent. People can change if they choose to." "Did you change, Sergeant?" Erica asked. "Did this war change you?" Riley smiled sadly. "I learned that enemies are just people in different uniforms. I learned that strength without compassion is just brutality. I learned that winning means nothing if you become what you fought against." He paused. "Yeah, I changed." He left her alone in the office, surrounded by files documenting the defeat of everything she'd once believed in, and the strange mercy of enemies who had chosen kindness over cruelty. July 1945. Repatriation orders came through. The women of Barracks 4 were scheduled for transport to New York, then by ship to Bremerhaven, then dispersal to their home regions under Occupation Authority supervision. Erica packed her few possessions, the Rilke book, letters from her mother, photographs she'd been given as gifts by American guards who'd decided she was worth remembering. Everything fit in a small canvas bag. The night before departure, the women gathered in the barracks for a final evening. Some talked about what they'd find at home. Others made plans to stay in touch, though everyone knew those plans would probably fail. Greta cried. Anna was silent. Liesel maintained her bitter edge to the end, refusing to soften even now. Erica walked outside into humid Louisiana night and found Sergeant Riley standing near the barracks, smoking a cigarette. Couldn't sleep? He asked. No. He offered her the cigarette. She took it, dragged smoke into her lungs even though she'd never smoked before. I want to thank you, she said, for treating us like people, for being, she struggled for the word, bigger than you needed to be. Riley smiled at the phrasing. We're all bigger than we need to be, that's the point. We choose how to use that size. Cruelty or kindness, oppression or mercy. You chose mercy. We chose to act like decent people even toward enemies. That's not mercy, that's just being human. They stood in silence, listening to cicadas sing and distant thunder rumble across pine forests. What will you remember about us? Erica asked. Riley thought about it. That you were brave, that you survived, that you faced the collapse of everything you'd believed and didn't break. That's worth remembering. What should I remember about you? She asked. That we were just soldiers doing a job, that we tried to do it honorably, that we believed treating prisoners well wasn't weakness, it was strength. He paused, and that we were bigger than you expected, and that made all the difference. Erica laughed, despite everything. Yes, you were definitely bigger than we expected. Dawn came gray and humid. The women assembled outside the barracks with their bags, waiting for transport to the train station. Guards formed a loose perimeter, not threatening, just present, guiding without force. Sergeant Riley stood near the truck that would take them to the station. As each woman climbed aboard, he shook their hands, a formal gesture that felt oddly appropriate. When Erica reached him, he held her hand for a moment. Good luck, Schneider. Rebuild well. Thank you, Sergeant, for everything. She climbed into the truck, found a seat near the window. As the engine started and they pulled away, she watched Camp Ruston recede. The barracks, the mess hall, the administration building where she'd spent months filing documents and learning that enemies could be decent. Greta sat beside her, crying quietly. I don't want to go back. I don't want to see what Germany has become. Neither do I, Erica admitted, but we don't have a choice. This is what losing means. We face it. We fix it. We make sure it never happens again. The truck rolled through Louisiana countryside, green and lush and utterly foreign. Through the window, Erica glimpsed farms with full barns and fat cattle, towns with lights burning even in daylight, people who looked well-fed and unconcerned about war. She thought about propaganda posters showing weak Americans dependent on money instead of strength. She thought about the reality. Guards like Riley who towered over them physically and morally, choosing kindness when cruelty would have been easier and perhaps even justified. She thought about going home to rebuild a country that had lost everything because it had believed lies and followed leaders who promised superiority while delivering destruction. And she thought about carrying forward the lesson that strength without compassion is just brutality, that winning means nothing if you become monsters, that the truly strong are those who choose mercy even toward the defeated. Erica Schneider returned to Germany in August 1945. Hamburg was worse than she'd imagined. Block after block of ruins, people living in cellars, hunger everywhere. Her parents had survived, but were skeletal, aged beyond their years. She worked rebuilding what the war had destroyed. Physical labor, clearing rubble, salvaging materials, helping reconstruct buildings. But also psychological labor, confronting what the regime had done, facing guilt and shame and complicity, trying to build something better from complete collapse. She married in 1948, a man named Thomas who had been a prisoner in England and carried similar stories of unexpected kindness. They had 3 children and told them about the war not as glory, but as warning. In 1965, Erica received a letter from America. Sergeant Marcus Riley, now retired, had tracked her down through Red Cross records. The letter was brief. Dear Mrs. Schneider, I hope this finds you well and thriving in rebuilt Germany. I often think about the women from Camp Ruston and wonder how you all fared. I hope you found the strength to rebuild both your country and of humanity, that their enemies had chosen mercy when vengeance would have been easier. Scholars later analyzed the psychological impact of the physical disparity between well-fed American guards and malnourished German prisoners. The size difference had been stark, undeniable proof that propaganda had been wrong about American weakness. That realization had cracked open ideological certainty more effectively than any interrogation. The lesson echoed forward through generations. Propaganda lies, but physical reality doesn't. When you tell people their enemies are weak and inferior, and those enemies turn out to be strong and capable and merciful, the cognitive dissonance shatters belief systems. Marcus Riley died in 1998. At his funeral, his children read from his war diary, written in Camp Rustin, July 1945. Today, the German women left for repatriation. Schneider thanked me for treating them decently. I told her we were just doing what decent people do. But I've been thinking about it since. Maybe that's the point, that we have to actively choose decency, that it's not automatic, that treating enemies with respect even when we don't have to is what separates civilization from barbarism. I hope they remember us as people who were strong enough to be kind. I hope, when they rebuild Germany, they remember that strength and mercy aren't opposites, they're complements, that the truly strong can afford to be merciful. In 2019, researchers at the University of Texas discovered preserved records from Camp Rustin, guard logs, prisoner files, photographs. Among them was a group photo taken in July 1945. 19 German women standing in front of Barracks 4, flanked by 6 American guards, including Sergeant Riley. The disparity was visible even in the photograph. The guards towered over the women, not just taller but broader, healthier, carrying weight that spoke of abundant food and relative peace. The women looked thin, worn, uncertain, but what caught historians' attention was the expressions. The guards weren't smirking or threatening. They looked professional, serious but not cruel, and the women, despite everything, looked not terrified but resigned, accepting, almost peaceful. It was a photograph of enemies who had learned they were just people, and your lives. I hope you passed forward the lesson that even enemies can be decent, that mercy matters, that we're all just people trying to survive in circumstances beyond our control. Best wishes, Marcus Riley. She wrote back immediately. They corresponded for years. Annual letters, holiday greetings, photographs of growing families. The correspondence became a thread connecting two people who had been enemies and had learned that enmity was smaller than humanity. In 1988, Erica visited America for the first time as a free citizen. She traveled to Nebraska, met Riley and his wife, saw photographs of his grandchildren. They sat on his porch drinking coffee and talked about Camp Rustin, about the war, about the strange grace of surviving. "You were bigger than we expected," Erica said, echoing that first observation from 44 years earlier. Riley laughed. "And you were stronger than you knew. You survived. You rebuilt. You raised children who'll never repeat those mistakes. That's everything." Erica Schneider died in 2003 at the age of 83. Among her possessions, her children found the Rilke book given to her at Camp Rustin, letters from Marcus Riley spanning 5 decades, and a photograph of Riley and other Camp Rustin guards inscribed, "To Erica, proof that enemies can become friends, and that mercy is stronger than hatred. M.R., 1945. At her funeral, her daughter read from one of Erica's letters to Riley, written in 1990. "I think often about that first moment when we saw you guards on the platform, so much larger than we'd been told to expect, so much stronger than propaganda had prepared us for. That physical disparity symbolized everything we learned in the following months. You were bigger than we expected in every way. Physically, morally, psychologically. You had the power to hurt us and chose kindness. You had victory and chose mercy. That lesson shaped everything that came after. Germany rebuilt because people like me carried home the knowledge that strength doesn't require cruelty. Thank you for teaching us that. Thank you for being bigger than you needed to be." The story of German POWs in American camps became part of both nations' histories. For Americans, it represented an ideal that even in war, even toward enemies, decency was possible. For Germans, it became a reminder that defeat hadn't meant destruction. Captors who chose kindness, of prisoners who carried that kindness home and built new nations on its foundation. They were bigger than we expected, Erica had said. She meant it literally at first, a simple observation about physical size, but over time the phrase had come to mean something deeper. They were bigger in every way that mattered, bigger in compassion, bigger in mercy, bigger in the choice to treat defeated enemies as humans rather than as objects of vengeance. That choice, repeated thousands of times across hundreds of camps by thousands of guards who could have chosen cruelty but chose decency, changed the world. Not dramatically, not immediately, but quietly, persistently, one prisoner at a time, one act of kindness at a time, one broken ideology at a time. They were bigger than expected. And that made all the difference.